on YouTube when they watch this later as well. I want to welcome today's program speaker. Her name's Dr. Diana Mason, and she is she used to teach at UNT, and before she retired, and then she moved down to Austin, which I had not realized. So she comes all the way from there in a roundabout fashion, and she's going to be talking about the history of the Texian Navy. So if you've never known anything about that, this will be a great opportunity. There's not many people that probably know much about it, actually, especially those of us that didn't grow up in Texas like me. So I grew up in St. Louis, and she has a BA in zoology and from the University of Texas at Austin, and her MS is also in zoology from Texas A&M Commerce, and then she received her PhD as well in the University of Texas at Austin in science education with an emphasis in chemistry. So it's fascinating to me. You have a science background and you ended up getting interested in history. So see, anybody, to me that's one of the most interesting things. Anybody can enjoy history. And so today's program, I would like to thank John Naga for sponsoring the lunch and for the speaker. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, she did leave off one thing. I am an admiral in the 3rd Texas Navy. Okay, and I know we have another admiral with us. Which squadron are you in?
I'll have to get out the certificate to tell you that. I'm sorry, I don't know that offhand.
Well, the Dallas-Fort Worth one is Nimitz, and the one I'm in right now is in Austin, and it's the Moore.
Dan Flynn, Representative Flynn, presented it to me, so I suspect it's the Austin one.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, and you too can be in the Texas Navy. So texasnavy.org, and you can join. All right, let's start. Sound good?
Out on the coast of Texas, there's a ragtag bunch scene. The unsung heroes of this war, the Texas Navy. They held the Mexicans off and cut them off at sea. The unsung heroes of this war, the Texas Navy. Now Captain Charles Hawkins commanded the fleet of only 4 ships to control the blockade. They cut the Mexican supply lines and held them off at sea. The unsung heroes of this war, the Texas Navy. Out on the coast of Texas, there's a ragtag bunch at sea. The unsung heroes of this war, the Texas Navy. They cut the Mexican supply lines and held them off at sea. The unsung heroes of this war, the Texas Navy. The unsung heroes of this war, the Texas Navy.
Well, that pretty much tells you all you need to know. But we have to occupy Texas before we can actually depend upon the Navy. So one of the things you do is you have to find land, and if you want to be an impresario, you've got to sell the land, and keep this in mind. The sale of the land was a bit. And everyone, except maybe you, I don't know if they still do this yet, but every one of you in this room knows what a bit is, because we used to say 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1. So there are 8 bits in $1, and so every bit is 12.5 cents. Make sense? Do you still do that, Yale?
No.
No, never heard that, huh? Oh, well. If you farmed, you could get a labor, which is 177 acres, and if you raise stock, you got a league, which is 4,428 acres. And keep in mind, it's selling for a bit. And you have to have good moral character to come to Texas, all right? Which is actually come to Mexico, right? Because we were Mexican at the time. Form a militia, and you had to speak Spanish. Okay, because, I mean, we're moving into Mexico. All right, so you have to do all of that to be an impresario. And Moses Austin is the one that actually got all the paperwork done. All right, now, who's the father of Texas? Which Austin? Moses or Stephen F.?
Well, I always knew Stephen.
Yes. And he is the one that gets to claim that title. Who did all the paperwork and got it approved and all of that was Dad. Moses Austin is the one who actually got it going. However, he had a heart attack and died before he got the paperwork signed. And so Stephen F. is actually the one that got it signed. And so he, by default, becomes the father of Texas.
Did you call him an impresario?
Well, Moses was trying to become an impresario, but when Stephen F. took over, he was the one that was in charge of the colony.
So that was a designation by the Mexican government?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. They moved into what we call Coahuila y Tejas. Okay, now do we have a, I don't know, do we have a laser here?
Yeah, there
Yes,
is.
we
It's
do,
right
but it
there.
doesn't show up there. Okay, that's
It
fine.
won't show up on TV, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. But anyway, Coahuila y Tejas is this dark green region, and so that was the state in Mexico that we're moving into. And now, Stephen F., as I said, he gets all the credit for being the father of Texas, for bringing the first colonists over. And his flag up in the left-hand side, the straight up and down cross, we still use that one today at Episcopal churches or Anglican churches. That's St. George's cross, which is England and Wales, which represented the Protestant, that he wasn't going to, differentiate. And St. Patrick's cross is the one that is the X. So he got Ireland, England, and Wales, and actually that was pretty good, but there just happened to be a lone star on that flag. And that's in the office at the San Felipe de Austin Museum. All right, so we've done all we need to do. We've got the, come on in if you want to. We've got all the paperwork in order, it's been signed, and now it's time to bring the colonists over. And we have a pre-arranged site to bring the ship in here at the mouth of the Colorado. I'm going to focus on the Trinity de Brazos in the Colorado, and then it's at the mouth of the Colorado River is where the ship is going to bring the supplies. And then Stephen F. is bringing the colonists over land. The name of the ship is the Lively, and we're talking about 1821. It's got supplies and seeds and tools and enough to start a colony of 300 families. Okay, now we call them the old 300, even though technically there's only 297. But we're Texans, so we have to inflate everything, so we call them the old 300. And they waited, unfortunately, they waited Stephen F. did, at the mouth of the Brazos River. Okay, now look at this. Now, he's brought them over from the United States, and he brings them here to the mouth of the Brazos River. The Lively thinks we're meeting at the mouth of the Colorado River. Oops, that's a problem. Okay, and so Stephen F. thought that the Lively had been lost, and the Lively thought that all the colonists, just simply hadn't made it. And so Stephen F. waited so long, and then they moved up the Brazos River to what became the capital, the first city, etc. of the colony of San Felipe de Austin. Down here would be the Brazos River. Now remember, the Colorado's down here. So if Stephen F. had known what he was doing and what river was what river, he might have gone up the Colorado River and made Austin, where Austin is, because Austin's on the Colorado River. You never know. But it became on the Brazos River. And I took this picture. All that's left of the original colony is the water well. Now we burned, and this is kind of moving up until 1836, we burned everything when we were trying to get back to the U.S. When we were being attacked by Santa Anna. All right, the only thing that's left is the original water well. But they are starting to rebuild the San Felipe de Austin to look like it originally did. And they have finished what they call the town hall. But San Felipe de Austin was a biggie. It's social, economic, political center of the colony. It was got a post office, a newspaper, land offices, and they started using the word Texas Ranger, even though that didn't get into our vocabulary officially until 1874. All right, but then, that was 1821. In 1824, Mexico decided to rewrite the Constitution. And all of a sudden, instead of having a more or less liberal constitution, they had a much more conservative constitution, which included everybody must be Catholic, and that was a problem. Although they did kind of circumvent that because they found a priest that would look at you and go, "Oh yeah, I think you're Catholic too," and they would just sign, "Oh, here's communion. Now you're Catholic." Okay, and you couldn't bring slaves into Texas because it was against Mexico's constitution. No slavery existed. So what did they do? They took, because in the U.S. we had slaves, they took to the federal courts in New Orleans and got the name changed to an indentured servant. Now they were indentured for 100 years. Let me see. Indentured servant for 100 years or a slave for life. But actually, in defense of people like Sam Houston who had slaves, when the Emancipation Proclamation came around, he was a senator at that time. He released all his slaves. And according to the bio, his slaves cried because they were like, well, where are we going to live? Where are we going to be educated? Where are we going to church? Where, how are we going to eat, et cetera, because they liked being sharecroppers for Sam Houston. So they didn't want to leave. But, it's just wording is why we had to have them change the name to indentured servants, because that was okay to bring into Mexico to where slaves were not. The hardest hit because of the taxes, that was something new in the Constitution too, is the farmers. How are we going to get our cotton to market? And the market was either the USA or maybe even England or something like that. But we had to get it out of the ports. And you have to have money to operate the ports and the garrisons. So that's where, and the cattlemen also, to get cattle to where it market, where was the biggest market? Probably the USA. They had to tax and things like that. All right, so the first clashes begin after this change of Constitution in 1832. All right, and there were some conflicts at Anahuac and Velasco, the Trinity River and the Brazos River, but nobody was killed at that time. And Stephen F. tries to go to Mexico City to solve the problems of all the discontent of the colonists and what can we do about this. And he was arrested and jailed. Oh, well. But that he finally did get released, and he came back to Coahuila y Tejas. And this is the one that is most famous. Everybody knows the Come and Take It cannon, right? You've seen the t-shirts, and the kids wearing Come and Take It stuff today have no idea what they're wearing. But it's for the Battle of Gonzales. And that is the current example of a real cannon from the Battle of Gonzales. They had one on display forever and ever and figured out it wasn't the right one. Oops. And so they think this is really the right one, that it really was the cannon that caused all the ruckus. That's the one everybody knows about. But it is not where, it even gets an honor day. Anybody in here in DRT? Daughters of the Republic? No Daughters of the Republic? Okay. Well, this is one of their honor days. It's October 2nd, because that is where the land battle started. However, the fact is, in September, the month before, the first actual conflict was down at Freeport, which it was Velasco at that time, on the Brazos River. And the Texian, San Felipe, and the Mexican Guerrero, that's what actually started the first conflicts. It was actually the Texas Navy that fired the first shots. And we get very little credit for starting the conflict. And the Mexican ship was forced to unconditionally surrender. And we actually do get a honor day from DRT, but now be careful about this one because it's not a date. It's the third Saturday of September. So it's whatever date that happens to fall on. It's the third Saturday of September. So in case you want to celebrate that. All right, it's now 1835. In November, we fired the first shots. The Battle of Gonzales is over. We're on a roll because we won the clashes on the sea. We won the Battle of Gonzales. And so now we're thinking that we need to form a general council. And now also think about the fact that everything pretty much, we don't have highways like I-30, right? We have rivers, streams, Gulf. We have a lot of water going on, so having a Navy is very, very important. And the first Naval Committee was formed on November 14th, and what, 11 days later, the bill passed. Let's see if we can do, how long did it get a bill passed through this Congress? 2 years before they can actually get back and get it done. But we have no money, we have no credit, and we have permission to buy 4 schooners. That's a problem. No money, no credit, but we got to buy 4 ships. So what do? And also, not only do we have to buy the schooners, we got to outfit them. All right? We have, and that's from Camp Mabry in Austin. They have an exhibit to the Texas Navy. And that's their exhibit is for the cannons and cannon shot and stuff like that. And of course you have to have uniforms because you have a Navy. All right, so Stephen F. goes to New Orleans, all right, to get a loan for the down payment. And he's going to be selling land at 4 bits. Okay, what was it just a few years ago? 1 bit. So now it's 50 cents an acre. All right, and it could bring, we need 250,000, so that's how he came up with the 4 bits an acre. What's the problem? We're selling land. What's the problem?
Somebody else owns it,
Who owns the land?
Mexican
Mexico.
government.
Yeah, we don't own the land. Mexico owns the land, but we put it up as collateral and we're selling it. Minor little detail. The good moral character. That's what we're going for, good moral character. So, but the Texian Navy became a reality, and it existed from 1835 to 1837. All right, so those are our first 4 ships: Independence, Brutus, Invincible, and Liberty. Okay, now it's a different sort of a navy, okay, a different sort of military. And there's a difference between being a pirate and being a privateer. Pirates are subject to capital punishment. Privateers carry letters of marque and reprisal, and they have permission to pirate, because that's kind of how they exist, is they capture and loot a ship, and they give 10% to the government, but everything else goes to the sailors on board. And it was quite lucrative for people like John Lafitte, just 15 years before. And it's all due to the letters of marque and reprisal. All right, now what the privateers are supposed to do is prevent Mexico from attacking. They're to protect and defend the coastline, to blockade if necessary, to disrupt Mexican shipping, because Mexico had agreements with the U.S. So there was a shipping canal, a route in between. And they are supposed to protect the shipping and trade lines from New Orleans from Texas to New Orleans. But we need a Secretary of the Navy. Okay, if we're going to do all this privateering, we have to have someone to be responsible. All right, so our first Secretary of the Navy was Robert Potter. Okay, there's a picture of him. He was a U.S. midshipman from 1815 till he got to Texas in 1821. He was a member of the North Carolina House of Commons twice. Now, keep in mind, we only want people in Texas of good moral character. All right, in 1831, he was convinced his wife was having an affair with 2 men. And one was a Methodist minister, and the other one was her cousin. And he was enraged, and in the middle of the night, got a knife and castrated them both. That was a no-no. He was found guilty, and he got 6 months in prison and fined $2,000. And 3 years later, his wife divorced him. She's a little slow on the uptake. When he got out of prison, he went back to the House of Commons and was re-elected again. Can you imagine?
Is that in North Carolina or in Texas?
No, North Carolina. He's still in,
North
he's not here
Carolina.
yet.
Okay.
He's not here yet.
That's
Okay.
already clear.
And this time, he actually did get expelled from the House of Commons in North Carolina, but not for his behavior, except for the fact he got caught cheating at cards. Boy, cheating at cards, and you are out of here. We don't want to have anything to do with you because you are a bad person. So he goes to Texas. All right, and he signed the Declaration of Independence and was appointed by President Burnett as the SECNAV, and as a cabinet appointee. And then he actually had to run for the office because Samuel Rhodes Fisher was also running, and Potter was elected. All right, so that's number 1. All right. Oh, and we have a county named after
Potter
Potter.
County, yeah.
Amarillo.
Amarillo, yeah.
All right. Now, Samuel Rhodes Fisher, he was the grandson of Samuel Rhodes, who was a colonial mayor, a friend of Benjamin Franklin, and a member of the Continental Congress. All right, so this Fisher came to Texas at the invitation of Stephen F. and was a delegate to Washington on the Brazos, which was our original capital of the Republic. Was educated and cultured. In fact, he is given credit as the pen and genius behind the Constitution of Texas in 1836. And he became the chairman of the newly formed Naval Committee. However, Potter is not finished with his shenanigans. He actually, and I think I'll talk about this in just a second, but Potter had been defeated by Fisher, but Fisher was out chasing women again. And during the Great Scrape, he went off following them back to the USA, and so by kind of default, Fisher became the new SECNAV. And he became, it was sort of de facto because Commodore Hawkins, wrote to him as Secretary of the Navy because he was the best that they could do at the time. And he only was Secretary of the Navy for a couple of years because in 1839 he was shot. And Houston did not like the Navy. They were not friends at all. And there is evidence that some of Houston's men shot him because he was Navy. But there's no proof of that. And he had 4 children, and Beth Fisher is an admiral in our Texas Navy. And she is, a descendant of Samuel Rhodes Fisher. And Fisher gets a county named after him. And they're also close to the water. That's what gets me is, they're just right down there on the Gulf.
Do we know the circumstances of his shooting? I mean, was somebody charged or?
Nobody was
Self-defense?
charged. There was an event, I read a little story about it. There was an event like a parade sort of thing, and there was a group of people. And one of that group of people is who shot him. So I'm sure
So,
at the time it was
person's
probably,
unknown,
well, unknown to history. I'm
Yeah.
sure at the time it was probably known. So anyway, back to pirating or privateering, the standard operating procedure is that you board a Mexican ship that happens to be in port. It's, a lot easier to jump on board if it's anchored. And then you're armed to the gills and in attack mode, and you fire the first shots. The Mexican sailors jump off into the Gulf, swim away. It's just like in the movies. This is what actually does happen. You hoist the sail, cut the anchor, and you sail away with the whole ship. You get 90% of it and give 10% of the proceeds to the government.
Whose port is this ship in? Mexican? or-
Yeah, Mexico.
God.
Well, we didn't
Okay.
have a lot of tele service back then, so they didn't see them coming, I guess. Now, a little bit about our Commodores. Captain Hawkins and his mentor were actually court-martialed when they were in the U.S. Navy for piracy. They were invading Puerto Rico and got busted, basically. And so what do? You're accused of a crime and guilty. What do? You come to Texas, because we only want high moral character here. And then both of them joined the Mexican Navy, and then in 28 they resigned for the Mexican Navy and joined the Texas Navy. And they commanded the Independence, which was one of our first 4 ships. By March, everybody knows that we're into signing documents and declaring our independence from Mexico. This is the house right here on the lower left of where the Declaration of Independence was signed on Sam Houston's birthday. I think we're all sitting around going, hey, happy birthday, Sam. Let's sign the Declaration of Independence. Sounds like a good thing to do today. All right, and then on March 6th, the Alamo fell, and that is my 5th great uncle. So now, that does not mean direct lineage, right? His sister married into my family. That's how he gets to be my uncle, because now Travis had 2 kids, but neither one of them reproduced. So there are no direct descendants of Travis. But his sister married into my family. is not worried about this in the least, because he's going to march from San Antonio toward Houston, which is over by San Felipe de Austin, over, you know, where we all have the colonies and all that. And then his Navy is going to deliver to the east side of Galveston new troops, ammo, and food. Not a problem. We're going to attack from the west, we're going to attack from the east, we're going to trap Sam Houston in the middle, and this will all be over. That's the plan of Santa Anna. All right, everybody with me? We're going from the east and from the west. The plan is, President Burnett is, and how do you kind of know in this day that the war is over? If you capture the flag. You know, that's kind of basically what it all boils down to, is if you get the Constitution and the documents of the state and you have the flag, it's all over. But that probably wouldn't have meant too much to us back in those days. The only problem is that Santa Anna did not know that the Mexican Navy was in such disarray. All right, so this is what we got going on here. Now, here's the Alamo, and they're marching this way. Here's San Felipe de Austin, and here's San Jacinto, where the last battle took place, and Galveston. So they're going to deliver the food, the ammo, and the supplies here, and everybody's going to be happy in San Jacinto, and or San Jacinto, as I should say. And then here, now this is kind of a long trek, and it was no big deal that the Mexican troops were using up their ammo to shoot food. But now remember, when they get over to East Texas, the Great Scrape has wiped, I mean, they burned everything within sight. There was very little for them to eat. Even if they had ammo, there wasn't a lot to shoot at. And so Santa Anna had his troops on a starvation diet. But he was not worried because all this new stuff was coming in, not a problem. All right, now the captains were appointed by President Burnett, and they were Hawkins, Hurd, brothers Jeremiah and William Brown, whose father died at the Alamo, and then Wheelwright, who was a co-captain of the Liberty. These are known pirates. We already talked about the pirates that got busted in Puerto Rico. Privateers, smugglers, and a tavern owner. These are our leaders of our Texas Navy. Aren't y'all excited? Right? I see on your faces that you are just totally excited about this. But what you have to do now is we have an enemy, and so you seize a ship and you loot it. All right? And which becomes very interesting. And also, we also have Marines. And there were some false flags that you would take on the shore, and you would wave the Mexican flag, and you'd get a Mexican ship to go to the Mexican flag, because it was supposed to be a safe place to land, right? Not quite. There are a lot of shenanigans going on. And we even still have the Horse Marines today. That's a current picture of our Horse Marines. And it's the only unit that's ever been issued a Tomahawk as standard issue. Now, I found that amusing. But they were very instrumental in capturing some of the ships. And these are the battles that took, major battles that took place between 1835 and 1836. And I wish I could have a better picture of that, but we're going to talk about a few of the incidences. And all of it, we capture a Mexican brig, like the Pelicano, and you look at the manifest and they're carrying flour. Okay, that's a legitimate thing to be transferring, you know, from Mexico to the United States. However, if you get to looking at all the barrels that are supposed to be flour, you find planted inside of them gunpowder. Oops. That was probably not on their manifest. And so you, as a sailor who's just captured the ship, you appropriate the munitions and the food, and you deny, therefore by default, you deny it to Santa Ana. All right, the Invincible. This one was sailing to Matamoros, and a full-scale invasion by the sea south of Texas was underway. Mexico got supplies from New Orleans. So what do? You break up that shipping lane. And the Bravo was formerly known as the Montezuma. I think some of you in this room have heard of Montezuma's Revenge. And they again had a false manifest. They gave the gunpowder to Sam Houston, who then gave it back to the Mexicans at San Jacinto. And then the Invincible saw a merchant ship, the Pocket, flying the U.S. flag. Now, the U.S. at this time is supposed to be neutral, and it's a no-no to board a ship flying the U.S. flag. Well, you know, the same thing's going on. This is just an example of our flag, and it's Navy flags are very important to the Navy. They tell you a lot about, you know, what is going on. And this particular flag was the de facto national flag between 35 and 39. 13 stripes and a lone star. Now, back to our U.S. vessels. This is the Brutus. Again, a manifest that says we got flour, and then you find ammunition supplies that were meant for the Mexican army at San Jacinto. And a 100-pound barrel of flour, there were 25 pounds of gunpowder in it. And that was like a standard thing to do. The U.S. citizens sympathized with Texas's cause, but we're not supposed to be getting on those ships, but we did. You know, details. And this is the cannon from the Brutus. They found it in 1884, and when they were dredging, they're trying to deepen the Galveston ship channel, and then the hurricane of 1900 came in, and it was reburied, and they didn't discover it again until 1974 during another construction project. But this time, they picked up this cannon and put it in from the roof down for our museum people. Sometimes you go through the roof and you put the cannon in there, and then you put the roof on after you get the cannon inside. But you can go see that particular cannon from the Brutus. It's in the Texas Seaport Museum. All right, so Sam Houston is going to defeat Santa Anna on the 21st of April, 1836 in an 18-minute battle. Why? Santa Anna was busy, supposedly, and he didn't have food, troops, and ammo. Everything that he had planned on being at San Jacinto was not there. Oops, details. All right, so no replacement troops, no food, no ammo, and in 18 minutes, we have captured the flag and Santa Ana and a whole bunch of and killed a whole bunch of people. We lost a few, but Santa Ana lost a whole bunch. And pretty much it was over. Now it's time to sign a treaty, and I found this very interesting, and I bet you dimes to dozens. This kind of thing still goes on today. There is the treaty that the public sees, and then there's the treaty between the governments. And I bet that still goes on today, even though we probably will never know until you have 100 years of history to go through. But the public treaty was never fight against Texas again, exchange prisoners, all Mexican forces have to leave, and then the property needs to be rightfully returned to the Texian, and now Texan, who owns or resides on it. And then the secret thing was Santa Anna was to be released. Where did Santa Anna die? Anybody know? New York City. Oh, why was he in New York City?
He was exiled, wasn't he, from the Mexican government?
More than once, like 12 or 13 times. Yes, he was exiled several times. but he was selling chiclets, chewing gum. We owe our chewing gum to Santa Ana. But anyway, he was, at this time, he was returned to Mexico, and he became a dictator again after, between our commodores and things like that, it's an interesting existence. And he was returned to Veracruz, and he had to recognize Texas independence, and the Rio Grande was set as the boundary. But now someone has to take Santa Ana back to Mexico, and Hawkins was ordered to do it, and he's like, no, I would rather blow up my ship than take him anywhere. But Captain Brown said, aye, aye, sir, and that's how he got back to Mexico this time. The Invincible is still existing, and on its way to Veracruz, it fell in with a French vessel. And the French vessel pulled the Invincible over and said, what is that flag you're flying? I've never seen it. And they said, it's Texas. Excuse me, I've never heard of Texas. It's a country, it's a republic. What do you mean? And, explained that we won our independence and that we now have our own flag. And that the French were, it's a very interesting story in the fact that the French were actually the first country to recognize our independence. And the oldest house in Austin, which is down there at the lower left, is the French legation. Legation is just another word for a little embassy. And we had in France, and I took a picture of that little sign there, and you go to the Louvre, and okay, that's the Louvre down there, and you walk this way, and it's a pretty good walk, but at the end of the park area and on your right will be where this hotel is. Now it's a hotel, but that sign still is, this is where the Texas embassy was. So France was actually the first country to recognize our existence as a country. So that was kind of cool. And for a long time, we flew the French flag at the legation. And that was for some reason they've stopped flying the French flag, but I think that's very unfortunate because I think it should still be flown. All right, so the demise of the first Texas Navy. All the ships had been lost by the mid-1837, the Independence, the Brutus, and the Invincible, and the Liberty. And also Sam Houston decided that all the sailors needed to have Colt 36s. Now, who knows? But it kind of got Colt out of a money situation that he was in. So in fact, there's probably as many revolvers in Texas as there were males in Texas. Go figure, it's Texas. And we're a republic now, and we get another navy. Navies are still very, very important to our existence. And how did they fund themselves? We're stepping it up a bit. The Yucatan was having trouble with Mexico too, all right? And they liked the way the Texans did things, the Texas Navy did things. So they hired the Texas Navy for $8,000 a month. Can you imagine that? I mean, $8,000 in 1836, that's probably a 37. That's probably a sizable chunk of change. And anyway, that's how we started off with these. Now there's 2, 4, 6, 8 ships. There are 2 of them in the middle group. There's 2 that look alike, so they just kind of put them together. I took that picture at the Camp Mabry Museum. And in our second, and I had to throw this in because we're kind of at the demise of the first Texian Navy, but we're into the second Texas Navy, and the next SECNAV was Hunt. Might sound familiar to people who live in Greenville, in what county? Hunt County. All right, and he was the third SECNAV for the Republic, and he was appointed by President Lamar. successor to the U.S. and our boundaries, he was responsible for setting the boundaries between Texas and the U.S. Now remember, we used to have land that would go all the way from here up to Montana, okay? And that was all sold off. We did not get into the U.S. by treaty, which a lot of people think we did, but we bought our way in by selling all that land up there all the way down here to the U.S. and then also selling our ships. So that's how we bought our way into the U.S. through annexation. And then Hunt County up there, and the next SECNAV and the last one of the Republic was Cook, and he also got a county named after him. So we're into naming counties after naval heroes, but what can we say? Oh, and I was gonna also say that all this land out here, we didn't have to sell this West Texas land because it won't grow a blade of grass. You can't support a cow on it. So y'all just go ahead and keep that as public land. We as in the U.S., we're not interested. Anybody know what the PUF fund is? Permanent University Fund? Last year, the Permanent University Fund from that worthless West Texas land, $32.1 billion. Pretty good worthless land, isn't it? Okay, and I'm in the 3rd Texas Navy. Our first admiral was Ginger Rogers, all right? And it was at the Texas State Fair where she got her commission. And Price Daniels reactivated the Texas Navy, and it is reviewed by the governor every year. Our headquarters is in Galveston, and it is largely commemorative nonprofit and chartered by the Secretary of State. Designed to assure the survival of Texas naval history and has brought together the people interested in preserving the history, rights, boundaries, water resources, and civil defense of Texas. So its membership is open to anyone who holds a commission of admiral. We only have 2 ranks. We have Commodore and Admiral. So, and the difference is, literally anyone can be a Commodore. It's just a matter of money per year. And there's our ceremonial flag for the Texas Navy, and I love this quote. Theodore Roosevelt in 1936. The Texas Navy, it's no exaggeration to say that without it, there would probably have been no Lone Star Republic, and possibly the state of Texas would still be part of Mexico.
How about that? Yeah.
You go back to that flag again.
There,
Thank
okay? Lone Star,
you. Yeah.
what can we say? Okay, and that
That
is
might be a
the
different
end
subject.
of the presentation. So thank y'all for coming. Questions that I can answer?
Well, that land you mentioned north of the Panhandle,
Yes.
part of that was the Louisiana Purchase originally. Did Mexico then claim some of that land that we would inherit
You'd
from
have to
Mexico?
actually get out a map of old, because the Louisiana Purchase came over like this and went up to that area.
Mhm.
And then the Mexican land went up straight north pretty
Mhm.
much.
Mhm.
And was there overlap? Shouldn't have been, but maybe,
Mhm.
so,
So then Texas inherited that essentially by taking over from Mexico.
yes.
And then could claim possession of it and then
Yes.
sell it to the U.S.
Because in the treaty, the Rio Grande was the boundary.
Right, right.
So we got everything north and west.
Yes.
Well, not all west, but some west. But the Daughters of the Republic of Texas have planted a marker, you know, the Texas state markers, in Carbon County, Wyoming, and in Alamosa, Colorado.
Okay.
To get the most west and most north points. So the daughters do their due diligence of finding out where everything's located.
You know, that permanent school fund, about
Yes.
25 years ago, the legislature allowed that to be used to guarantee bonds in Texas, because our bond rating was falling for a lot of, all these bond issues that were going out. And now we have the permanent school fund guarantee. A lot of schools use that. State of Texas,
Yeah, well,
they back
it's
the bond
still
with
the
that
UT
fund.
system and A&M. It's in the Constitution that it's UT and A&M. UT gets 2/3 and A&M gets 1/3. Do you know why A&M only gets 1/3?
I do not.
No.
They saw that one and they wanted to be number one. And so they picked the 1/3 first and that left the 2/3 to UT.
You sound like a UT. You got your degree from UT.
I'm 2 degrees from UT.
All right. Well, my son is graduated from A&M.
Well, you can tell him now why he only gets 1/3.
Well, you know what they call people 5 years after graduation from A&M? Boss.
Boss.
Zing, zing.
Zing, zing. Yeah, now you know why they call, this is probably, doesn't need to be on the deal, but you know why